Welcome to our weekly meditation and mindfulness class. We'll begin today with a meditation. And Suzanne, just to explain to you, I also, in my emails, I send out a playlist on Spotify because we often use music in our meditations. It's totally optional. It's not necessary. But when I talk about music, that's what I'm talking about. And you can join the mailing list if you're interested in that, in music in the future. But otherwise, you can just sit in silence. That's fine too. So yeah, if you have your playlist, get that ready. I'll tell you when to hit play. And so let's just start by settling into our seat. Let's find a comfortable seated position. And if it feels comfortable, you can close your eyes and just settle into your seat. Begin to feel your connection to your body. Feel your connection to the earth. Feel your hips stacking above your legs. Notice your torso above the hips. Let's roll our shoulders up to our ears and down and back, keeping our shoulders soft and relaxed while we sit. Align the neck over the shoulders and slightly tuck your chin. Reach the crown of your head up to the sky. Let's have everyone take a deep inhale. As you exhale, imagine a wave of relaxation coursing down your body from the top of your head all the way down to your feet. Let's do that one more time, inhaling deeply. And as you exhale, just allow that wave of relaxation to cascade down your body, removing any stress, any tension you may be feeling, letting go of your day. So while we meditate, I invite you to continue with that relaxation technique. Just continue imagining these waves of relaxation coursing down your body, washing away any stress and any tension. If you'd like to use music, you can hit play now, and we'll come back in a couple minutes. when you feel ready, start to deepen your inhale, beginning to bring our awareness back into the body. When you're ready, you can open your eyes and rejoin us. So how's everyone feeling? How was that meditation? Everyone doing good? Any questions or any comments? Anyone feel like sharing right now before we start talking? Great. Okay, so the first topic I wanted to talk about tonight is about nature mysticism. And so I just recently learned about this concept. I mean, I'd heard before about earth-based religions and kind of indigenous cultures that worship the earth. But I never really heard about nature mysticism before. I mean, I've heard a lot about mysticism because that was a big emphasis that my meditation teacher taught. And by mysticism, the definition I've heard, or how I use that word, to me, mysticism means a pursuit of the direct experience of the universal consciousness. So the way I think about mysticism, it's the pursuit of trying to feel within yourself your connection to the divine, your connection to the universe or to the earth or to God or whatever label you'd like to use for that universal presence. And so I've heard of mysticism before and really studied that a lot. I never heard before about nature mysticism. And I just came across this in a book I was reading called The Christ of the Celts. It's about Celtic Christianity and Celtic spirituality. And so this is the first time I've heard of this concept of nature mysticism and the idea that through nature, by spending time in nature, that can be a spiritual activity. I mean, when I learned about mysticism through my meditation teacher, it was obviously just about the main route we explored for pursuing that divine that experience of the divine was through meditation. I think that's what's a lot of people commonly associate with mysticism is that idea of meditation. But with this concept of nature mysticism, the idea, or it's really appealing to me, the idea that by spending time in nature, that can help us feel our connection to the universe. And I guess this doesn't really sound profound when I speak about it, because I think a lot of us have a sense of this, but I've never really seen it spelled out before like this. This is why I'm really interested in this topic right now. And I kind of realized over the past 2 years, this is kind of what I've been stumbling into on my own. So when I left the Bay Area 2 years ago, I left my corporate life and kind of started on this semi-nomadic wandering life. I spent a lot of time in really small towns, a lot of time in living in places where nature was easily accessible. So I lived in some small villages in Costa Rica, and small towns in northern Wisconsin, where the big cities are far away, and when you step outside, you're in nature. Like when I'd step outside of where I was living, on either in the jungle in Costa Rica or in the great northern forest of the upper Midwest. And so, I spent a lot of time immersed in nature and away from cities. And when you spend a lot of time away from civilization, if you spend time not quite so fully civilized, not surrounded by buildings, not surrounded by all of the trappings of civilization, you really do kind of start to feel the presence of the universe around you in nature. And it's a really beautiful way to get in touch with that divine presence. And so I'm really excited to see this concept put into words. And and it's a so yeah. sorry, this is a really big topic, and I've been struggling how to talk about it. So if I'm a little tongue-tied, it's because there's a lot of things, and I'm sometimes referring to my notes. So if I'm a little distracted, that's what. Um, but I was really struck by this idea that spending time in nature, which is something I've always loved to do, and it's always really refreshing to me, but spending time in nature can be part of our spiritual practice, and it can be a very beneficial spiritual practice to help us feel that presence of the universe and help us um, get in touch with the divine within us. And and I think particularly spending time alone in nature. So it's really, it can be nice to go on a hike with friends and talk and spend time, but if we're talking to people, then our minds are still engaged in kind of the human world, the human intention. But when we spend time alone in nature, or just quiet, silent in nature, that's when the sense of the universe really starts to sink in onto us. And I'm sure, I'm guessing probably some of you have experienced this on your own with your own time in nature. And it's a lot easier to feel in less populated areas. So up here in Humboldt County, it's a lot easier to feel all of the nature around us. In the places I lived over the past couple of years, where there's not so much urbanization and not so much of the structures of human attention that keep us locked into our limited human awareness. So when we're able to kind of get away from civilization, get away from the things of man, it's much easier to instinctively feel the universe all around us, to feel the divine all around us. And so I'm really interested and excited moving forward about how this can be used as a spiritual practice, how we can help find within all of us our connection to the universe by spending more time in nature, which is something that I've always loved to do. And I think a lot of us can relate to that. I think a lot of us have that sense about how good it feels to be in nature and how refreshing it feels to be in nature. But I think we can take it even further, and we can, by spending time in nature, and especially if we go out into nature with the intention of opening ourselves to the universe, it can be a really powerful method for having a mystical experience, for feeling our direct connection to the universe. So yeah, any questions about that idea or any comments? I'm sure this probably isn't surprising to anyone, but it's kind of, there's just a new way of thinking about it to me that's really has me excited.
Hello? Yeah, can you hear me? I
Yeah.
don't want to talk over anyone. They now have these safari shows on YouTube where they show the animals and it's really chill. You just watch a hippo for like 20 minutes. It's very cool. And the Dalai Lama, when they asked him what he did for fun or to entertain himself, he watches these kinds of shows.
Oh,
I
yeah.
thought that was beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So just saying.
Yeah, well, that's interesting that the Dalai Lama does that. Yeah. Anyone else want to comment? Sure.
I'll comment. So I found it so interesting because we always kick off our meditations together with grounding down into the earth and with kind of like opening up to the divine or to the cosmos. And so it is already such a natural thing, but I think you actually like speaking on it a bit more, like it really resonated, but it's just like, oh, wow, we actually do that. And then it was like, yeah, like, anyway, so it was just kind of like to your aha, I'm like, aha. So yeah, so that was nice. But I do love that we actually start out with the grounding down to earth and opening up. Because that feels very relevant to what you're saying.
yeah, yeah. I just kind of started doing that. Like I said, over the last 2 years, since I left my formal meditation group and have kind of been more exploring my own spiritual path. Yeah, I just kind of stumbled into this, I feel like, or just instinctively drawn to it. And but now it's reading about this, it's making a lot more sense. And I think this idea is in many indigenous cultures and indigenous beliefs. I think a lot of the original earth-based religions, this is what it grew out of, this innate sense that we all have of the grandeur and the awe of nature. I mean, this is inherent to a lot of us, I think. Yeah, Gina.
So, yeah, you're right when you say this is such a big topic. Like, I think we could talk about this for weeks on end, because there's so much to it. There's so many facets to it.
Right.
But as someone who works outside and spends a lot of time, with my hands in the dirt, I think, because I've thought about, like, why is it that I feel the way that I feel when I'm out here working? Like, I can be in a city or something, and I don't, it changes when I'm in nature, especially when I'm alone. And I think one of the things that I've noticed is just how much who we are is reflected in nature. So you end up seeing, like, just as a really simple example is like the veins in a leaf or something really mimic our bodies. And you see that in so many different ways. And, maybe sounds that you hear in nature, and it just really makes you realize that you are of the earth, created of the earth. All the elements that are in that soil are in your body, and we're not separate. And so I think in some ways, when you're in nature and you're really paying attention and open, you just feel at home in a way that you don't feel when you're in something that's man-made, at least for me. And I think a lot of people have that experience too. So yeah, I just wanted to say that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you raise a lot of good points. And I think, like you're saying, a lot of this is something that's innate to our nature, but so many of us grow up in cities and grow up so far removed from nature that we never have a chance to really experience this on our own. And so yeah, but I think like you're saying, we often see the same repeating patterns at different scales throughout nature. And yeah, like you're saying, it just reinforces the idea that we arise out of nature, that we are part of it. We're just part of this one big continuum from the microscopic up to the macroscopic. Yeah. Great. Any other comments or questions on this topic? Okay, so let's meditate again then. So if you have music, you can get that ready. And so for this meditation, continuing on the topic of nature, let's imagine that we're in some beautiful place in nature. I'm sure, does everyone have a memory that they can recall of the last beautiful place you were in nature? So while we sit and while we meditate, let's focus on our heart, focus on the heart chakra, and remember how it feels to be in this beautiful natural setting. Remember how that feels, and just try to soak in that feeling of bliss and love of being out in a beautiful natural place. Okay, so if you'd like to use music, you can hit play now, and otherwise we'll come back in a few minutes. Slowly deepening your inhale, coming back into the physical body. Opening your eyes when you feel ready. Great. So how was that meditation? How was that technique? Do we like it? Thumbs up, thumbs down? Yeah. Great. Any questions or comments about that? No? Okay. Great. So the other idea I wanted to talk about tonight is something I've been thinking about a lot lately. And this again was inspired by this book I've been reading, the Christ of the Celts, and another book by the same author called Listening for the Heartbeat of God. And this is something we've been talking here a lot at the Abbey about is, we had a seminar last week about Celtic spirituality. Part 2 is going to be this Saturday, and I'm going to be leading this part of the discussion. And so last week was a big discussion about the historical context and philosophical context of Christianity and the early kind of development of Christianity and how Celtic Christianity developed separately from Roman Catholic Christianity. And so it got me thinking about this idea about, it seems like, so I'm going to premise this by saying there are some big oversimplifications and generalizations in what I'm about to say, but I think it's still useful to think about this idea about some of the fundamental differences between sort of what I'm calling Western spirituality and Western religions. So particularly the Abrahamic religions like Christianity and Islam and Judaism. So the differences between those Western religions and more of the Eastern spirituality or Eastern philosophies. So particularly Buddhism and Hinduism and Taoism, things like that. And it seems like one big distinction between the two of them is that, so in Christianity, well, Christianity is kind of unique. So Hinduism and Buddhism, they're all very diverse religions, very diverse ways of thinking. I mean, even within Hinduism, within Buddhism, there's lots of different schools of thought, lots of different beliefs. And Christianity, nowadays, there's quite a few different denominations, but they all stem largely from Roman Catholicism, which was developed in the 4th century AD. So after Christ was born, after his time, for several hundred years, for 400 years or so, there was all different types of, all different interpretations of his teachings going on, lots of different sects of Christianity that had really wildly different ideas about what Christianity meant. But then once the Roman Empire adopted Christianity as a state religion and developed an orthodoxy around that, they actively suppressed all those other ideas about Christianity and made their truth the one truth of Christianity, which has formed the basis of Christianity, and much of Western society and culture has all come from the Roman Catholic idea of Christianity. And in particular, one of the core ideas of this Roman Catholic Christianity, which also came out of Old Testament Judaism, is the idea of that existence is a struggle between light and darkness, or between good and evil. And I think that the earliest mention of this idea came from Zoroastrianism. So I don't know if you've heard of this old Persian prophet Zoroaster. That was one of the first documented religions, and the first kind of documentation of this idea that there is a God of light and a God of darkness, and our physical existence is the struggle between light and darkness. And so Christianity took this, or the Roman Catholics, the Roman Empire took this and really expounded in this idea that the physical world is a struggle between God and Satan, and that also within ourselves, there's a struggle within ourselves between our evil, sinful nature and the goodness of God. And that whole idea of original sin, that human nature is inherently evil and inherently flawed, that came from the Romans. That's not inherent to Christian thought. There was lots of different ideas circulating around Christianity about the nature of man, but the Romans, under the influence of Augustine, really came up with this doctrine of original sin. And that from 400 AD on, that's been a central part of Roman Catholicism. And it still even persists in the Protestant religions today. But that's not inherent to Christianity. That's not an inherent thought. The idea of our sinful nature, that's not inherent in the teachings of Jesus. That came about from the Roman Catholic Church. But so the idea is that there's, at the core of existence is this struggle between good and evil. There's a very black and white moralism to it, that there's good and evil. And if we're good, then our immortal soul will go to heaven and we'll have a really happy, nice heaven for the rest of eternity. But if we're bad, then our immortal soul goes to hell. And then for the rest of eternity, we're going to be suffering and misery. So this is a really serious mindset, or a real serious definition of the nature of reality, right? If we're good people, we'll go to heaven, but if we're bad, we'll go to hell forever. For the rest of eternity, we're going to be suffering if we're not good people. And so this is really at the core of Roman Catholic Christianity, and that's really dominated all of Western society and thought since then. And I think you can see that playing out right now in our Western dominated society, this idea that there is always a struggle between good and evil. And in order to make sure that we're good, we have to be certain that we're fighting against evil. So there's always this need for evil out there, and us define ourselves as good by fighting against this evil. So there's this emphasis on struggle and on morality and on a black and white good versus evil. Whereas in the Eastern philosophies, in things like Buddhism and Hinduism and Taoism, there's not this black and white moralism of good versus evil. So if we take Hinduism, for example, so Hinduism has they have thousands of gods, so many gods. But within Hinduism, there is an equivalent of the Christian God. So the one God, Brahman, not to be confused with Brahma, the creator God. But within Hinduism, there's this idea of a one central God, Brahman, and that is kind of the eternal source of everything. The universal consciousness is Brahman. And then there's the triumvirate, the big three gods in Hinduism. There's Brahma, the creator, Vishnu, the preserver, and Shiva, the destroyer. But even Shiva, the destroyer, the one who brings about the end of existence in a dance of fire at the end of creation, Shiva's not evil. Shiva is just part of the cycle of creation and destruction. And this destruction is kind of a loaded word. Another translation of the word, the original Sanskrit word, is dissolver. So sometimes Shiva is called the dissolver instead of the destroyer, because destroyer has all kinds of negative connotations with it that are not necessarily inherent in what he's all about. So unlike Christianity, in Hinduism, it's just more seen as a cycle of creation. You have creation and then existence and then dissolution so that the cycle can start again. And so there's none of this absolute black and white, good and evil. And there's none of this, there's still struggle within Hinduism, struggle within ourselves, but it's struggle against illusion and reality. It's not as morally loaded as Christianity. And also Hinduism and Buddhism, they have this idea of reincarnation. So instead of this one physical life determining the fate of our immortal soul, this life is just one of our cycles through creation. So it takes a lot of the pressure off of existence that is inherent in Christianity. I mean, from Christianity and from the, like I say, I think the Christian view is such a big part of our culture that we don't even realize how much it influences us. This idea of that life is really serious, and if you screw up, you're going to hell forever. I mean, we've kind of taken hell and heaven out of it, but still, that within our Western culture, there's still a strong emphasis on this absolute moral judgment, right, of being good people or being bad people. And you don't really see that in Hinduism. And then Buddhism just kind of took Hinduism and stripped away all the gods and all that stuff. And kind of at the essence of Buddhism is the idea that this physical reality, rather than being struggle, is just not real. This physical and our experience is all just created in our minds, and the true nature of reality is just nothingness. So again, but there's not this same idea of the struggle between good and evil. And so I think this is just a fascinating idea about and why Eastern religions have such an appeal to many of us, because some of us, or at least I know myself, and I feel like some of us, hey Jeff, I feel like some of us kind of see this idea that existence is struggle. Some of us kind of question the validity of that. And so I think that's part of one of the reasons behind the growing popularity that's been happening since the 60s or whatever, this growing popularity of more Eastern ways of thought that don't emphasize the absolute morality of life, that don't emphasize don't make such a big deal about how our actions in this life are either good or bad and determine the fate of our immortal soul. So yeah, I just find this idea fascinating. And so yeah, any questions or thoughts about that? No, silence.
Okay, I'm going to speak. So, I mean, again, you're talking, these are huge concepts that you're raising tonight. I guess just my own personal experience of being raised Catholic. Yeah, it was really hard to be told as a young girl that, I was a sinner and that I could like talk to a priest and tell him all my sins, and then I'm like absolved of all my sins, and then I can go off into the world and I'm like purified somehow. And I don't know, it just never resonated with me. But it was really hard to be always scrutinized, judge one way or the other, whether you're good or you're bad. And I think, I've mostly kind of been able to intellectually let go of that, but I think that on a core level, it's still in there. And
yeah, I mean, that's what I'm saying. It's been indoctrinated so deeply into each of us individually and into the core fabric of our culture that it's hard to imagine anything else, right?
yeah, there's good guys and bad guys in our
Right.
culture, and we wage war on, everything from the virus, it's always like we're fighting this or we're
Right. Yeah.
fighting that. And yeah, it's really insidious.
Yeah. And that idea of always judging each other. I mean, that's what I always felt growing up. Like, even though it's become a little separated from Christianity, there's still, I mean, growing up in the Midwest where I did, there's always still this idea of like, you're expected to fit in and do the things that good people do. Otherwise, like, you feel judged if you're not doing what everyone else is doing. And so, I mean, I think this all stems from this idea that was implanted in the church for political reasons back in the 4th century AD. And well, I could talk about this for hours. It's just so fascinating. The whole when that doctrine of original sin was incorporated into the church, it was for political reasons, not even for religious reasons. So there was this debate going on between Augustine and Pelagius about whether or not original sin is a real thing. I mean, so Augustine was arguing in favor of original sin, but Pelagius, who was a Celtic Christian, he was from Ireland, and he grew up influenced by Celtic beliefs and the indigenous Celtic beliefs more recognize the innate divinity in each of us and how we arise out of nature. But so there's this debate going on about whether or not humans are innately sinful, and the Pope at the time didn't weigh in. So Augustine wanted the Pope to excommunicate Pelagius, and the Pope at the time was like, "I don't agree. I'm not gonna do that." But then Augustine went to the emperor, the Roman emperor, and had the Roman emperor pressure the Pope to excommunicate Pelagius. So from the very start, it was a political decision that humans are innately sinful. And it's hard to assign intent to these decisions that happened thousands of years ago. But if you look at how it played out, it really seems like this was a calculated move because when you instill in people this sense, this hardcore innate good versus evil, and that the church has all the answers. So that's all part of it, that if you want to be a good person, you do what the church tells you. So, I mean, this seems like a really useful tool to control people. I mean, obviously, that's a jump. We can't know for certain what the intent of the emperor was in 400 AD, but it really is kind of what it seems like how it played out. And so, I don't know, it's just interesting that it was a political decision, not even a religious decision back then. Yeah, so I feel like when we look to the ideas in Buddhism and Hinduism and Taoism, it leads us to ideas that some of us innately feel more resonance with, that things aren't so black and white. It's not all about a struggle between good and evil. It's more of a spectrum. And yeah, I mean, evil things, there is still evil in the world. There's definitely suffering in the world, and bad things still happen. But it doesn't necessarily have to be part of this grand struggle between good and evil.
May I speak?
Please.
Carl Jung used to talk about the shadow always with us. We can never get rid of it. And you might twist that into original sin. But I have a friend who's a Buddhist who will always say to me when I'm in a dilemma, what seeds are you going to water? Seeds of destruction and darkness, or seeds of growth and light? And it isn't like the darkness isn't there. I have to cut it out of my head or pretend I don't have those thoughts. It's there. But it's like, where am I going to try to water the seeds? Where am I going to move? I just don't. Yeah, that shadow's there. There it is. Anyway, that's some thoughts.
Yeah, no, thanks for bringing it up. Yeah, and Jung actually talked about Christianity, how Christianity refuses to look at the shadow. And yeah, that whole idea of original sin, and throughout Christianity and still today, there's this refusal to acknowledge, or by calling our innate nature evil, there's from Christianity and still in our society today, there's just this desire to repress our repress our nature, like repress our deep urges, repress our emotions because they're bad or sinful. And instead of acknowledging the animal instincts that are still in us, because since we've evolved from animals, but we're now conscious beings, we still definitely have these animal tendencies in us. But rather than labeling them as evil and just trying to ignore them and pretend that we don't feel these things, a healthier approach is to address them and honestly look at these things within us. And I think that's something I've been talking a lot recently about, how the need to examine ourselves and the need to openly and honestly look at those bad thoughts that we're having, or sinful urges that we have. We can't just repress them. We can't just ignore they're not there. Because when we do that, then I think there's a clear example in the church. If you just try to repress sexuality, then you wind up with priests abusing altar boys. I mean, that's, whenever you try to repress something, it just winds up coming out sideways and all messed up. And I think this all goes back to this idea of the struggle between good and evil, rather than a more nuanced approach of towards existence. So yeah, that's all I have to say about that. Any other questions or comments? Is this topic interesting to you guys, or yeah? All right, we're going to be talking about it more this coming Saturday at 1 p.m. Like I mentioned, I'm going to be leading this week's part of the seminar, and I think kind of the focus of it is going to be what Celtic spirituality and Celtic Christianity, what that has to offer to kind of my generation, to or I guess people like us who are spiritually inclined, but not drawn to the church or have turned away from the church or whatever. I don't know exactly all of your guys' relationship to Christianity, but that's the emphasis I'm going to guide the discussions of how, because as I've been reading these books, I've been really kind of amazed that, because I thought, I mean, for a long time, Christianity was just totally dead to me, and I never thought I'd ever consider bringing that back into my life at all. And I'm still not really sure I'm going to bring it back into my life, but these books I've been reading have caused me to start thinking about things differently. And so that's kind of what we're going to be talking about on Saturday, if you find that topic interesting. Okay, that's enough talking from me. Let's meditate one more time. So if you want to use music, you can get that ready. And so for this meditation, let's just focus on our hearts, focus on our heart chakra. Just focus on breathing in love. Just focus on absorbing love from nature, absorbing love from the universe, absorbing love from God, just trying to bring that into our hearts. So if you'd like to use music, you can hit play now. Otherwise, we'll be back in a few minutes. Once more, slowly deepening our inhale, bringing our awareness back into the body. You're ready, you can open your eyes and rejoin us. So great. We're about out of time. Any last questions or comments? Sorry, it's kind of a heavy topic tonight. We're not always talking about such heavy topics. Yeah. Any last comments, questions? Great. Well, thanks for joining me tonight. Hope you all have a great rest of your evening. So,
Thank you,
yeah.
Matthew.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Nice to see
Thank
you, Gina.
Appreciate the thoughtful discussion.
Oh, great.
Lots to think about.
Yeah. Cool. Great. Yes.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Hi. Helen, say hi to Ted from us.
He tried to wave at you.
I
You saw
saw him.
Oh, I missed
Cute.
him.
Yeah, Jeff missed him.
and see Jezebel. And here's Miley.
Oh, finally. Yeah. Wait, what is she wearing? A pink sweater?
No, it's like a a fleecy thing because it's cold.
He's probably the best dressed dog in Marin County. She has you as a mom, Helen.
So I want to tell Matt. So listening to everything, my mother was Buddhist, so that was my exposure to religion, right? And I used to hear about heaven and hell and all these things that you would hear from Catholic churches, and Fridays was catechism, and it all sounded very foreign to me,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because in the Buddhist religion, you didn't talk about things like that.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, so it was something I heard, and it used to always sound like for other people because how we lived our life. And today, listening to you, I felt sort of like happy that I wasn't exposed to that as a young child, because it is pretty harsh,
Yeah.
right? You do something bad and you're going to go to hell.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I just kind of was thinking to myself that we didn't live like that, and
Oh, yeah. That's a really interesting perspective. Yeah.
yeah.
Huh.
Because I
Yeah.
always say that I felt like I had a really wonderful childhood growing up. And I think sometimes I can think about that, maybe because my mother was Buddhist, and she taught a lot of Buddhist things that she never said I'm Buddhist, but I only know that today as an adult, right? It's just her teachings were always very aligned with what we know today as, Buddhist sayings and Buddhist ways.
Oh.
My mother sort of lived that. So I feel very fortunate for that today. And she's gone, of course, but
Mhm.
she's always with me and the way she taught us.
Oh.
So just want to
Yeah.
share that.
Yeah. Thanks. That's beautiful.
Very
Yeah.
sweet. Lucky you, Helen.
I know you don't have as much of that programming to undo that we.
Right. I thought of that today when you were talking, like, okay, I didn't get any of that growing up.
Right.
I didn't either, really.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Did you go to church growing up?
No, we didn't. My dad was a Reformed Christian. He was very religious as a child and was in a very religious house, but then he became a scientist, and at some point he kind of let go of it and was really not very spiritual at all. So
Huh.
my whole spiritual path came through nature, and it was my own journey. I really didn't get it at all from my parents.
Yeah.
Because he was full on science, and then everything can be explained through science.
Right.
Jeff missed the first part of this talk too, but
Yeah.
we both were Helen, you don't know, but we were both just up near where Matt is, and we spent 5 or 6 days up there. And I mean, it was an immersion in nature that, I mean, like pristine nature in parts of it. And it was, I mean, it had
It was a pilgrimage.
it was a profound effect on both of us. Like we just
Wow.
came away from that just like different.
Okay, so Matt, so you have to have a retreat, right? So that we can all go up there and be together with you,
That's
Oh, yeah.
right.
right?
We have plans for that. That's something we'd like to do, is hold
Okay.
retreats here, because it's such a
Okay.
beautiful area. Yeah.
Yeah, when the Abbey opens, huh?
Yeah.
I think Carla and I will go together probably.
Oh, cool. Yeah. Great. Yeah. That's something we're definitely planning for the future.
Great. Well, thank you. That was wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for attending.
Bye, everyone.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Good to see you guys.
Yeah. Great to see you.